Hey, what's up guys? I'm Mike and this is Sporty's Chop Shop. In this video, I'm going to be going over installing the 240SX e-brake into my Datsun 620 to match with the 240SX rear subframe swap that I did. If you haven't checked out that playlist, it's in my channel under playlists of installing the rear subframe into the Datsun 620. So let's get started. Last I left off, I was missing a few hardware components for the rear subframe swap, just a few minor things like the e-brake clips for the caliper to the cable and a couple of bolts, the differential flange to drive shaft bolts, as well as a few of the CV axle bolts I was missing. I went with OE parts from nissanparts.cc, and they have a YouTube channel and an Instagram channel, and I'll link to those, so go ahead and check them out. They keep OE parts stocked, and they have a bunch of hard to find parts for things like the 240SX and older 90s legends. So far I've done a few things for the e-brake system off camera, so let me show you what I've done so far and catch you guys up, and we'll go from there. So aside from clipping in those clips for the e-brake cable on the wheel side of things, I bolted them onto the rear subframe, which you saw in the last video, and then I made this piece right here, which is the centerpiece. This holds the two e-brake cables. Normally, I believe on the 240SX they bolt into the bottom of the chassis, but I don't have anything back here, so I gotta go with what I got. So I made this plate out of 120 wall steel, and it just, let me show you. That just replaces what would be bolted into the chassis on the 240SX. So then I also went with these brackets in place here so that this can still move while I set it up. And then I made some of these plates here, so these will just be bolted right here, and then I'm gonna weld this crossbar to those plates. So I just gotta cut that to size while keeping this plate in place, weld it on both sides, and then I can go ahead and take this bar out. That's what I'm doing for the back there. And what we got for the front, you guessed it, just a whole complete 240SX front section here. So this will clip into where the cables end back there, and then I'll just bolt this straight to the floor there, and then just go between the seats. Boom, job done. So all 100% 240SX OE stuff minus the mounts. So I'll figure out how to sort this out once I get that bracket sorted out. Let's just quickly go over what I got here. So I clamped them in place on both sides and then gave it a little tack. This side I was struggling with. I don't know if you could see that on time lapse or not. But so what I got is some nice tight cables here, and then I drilled pilot holes to mark where I can expand those out. I think I'm gonna do an M12 bolt on both sides, and then to stop it from rotating, maybe just a M6 bolt right here. So I have the plates tack welded on, so let's drop this guy down. All right, there we go. So now I have plates that are welded on both sides. I can now fully weld that out off the truck and clean that up and weld those on as well, and get some PUR 15 or paint on both, and I'll be able to be done with this rear section of the e-brake. So that's great. Okay, I believe you guys just finished watching the time lapse of me finishing these side pieces. But you know what? I'm really not a fan of this design. If there's pressure, it could rotate around that bolt hole and fitting a second bolt on the other side of this ear over here just isn't practical. It's too small of a bolt, and I don't want different size bolts, kind of like I did on the gas tank thing, which maybe I'll throw up a picture of. So what I'm going to do is keep this same bolt hole, just use that M12 bolt, which should be plenty strong to hold this in place. But I think I'm going to cut these off and redesign it so that they have an ear on the outside. But instead of having you watch a time lapse and all that, maybe I'll just finish it up like that. All right. So as you can see, I did what I said. I left the, well, this is a different piece of metal, but what I did was I made the same design, but I left the ear over here, and that just stops this from rotating this direction, and then I can just get away with one bolt on both sides. The only thing I did different when mounting this up and building it and all that, the fab work is all the same, except for I just put a rivet through here so I wasn't struggling with holding it in place so much. So I'll mock this up and then show you what it looks like, and then move on to the interior. All right, here's the mock-up. Obviously, I need to weld this to the frame still. It's just tacked in place right now, but I got those M10 bolts through there. And now with the new design, see this ear wraps all the way around here, all the way on the front. So this can't rotate any direction, and I can just hold it in place with one bolt on both sides there. So much simpler design. I did have to remake those ears, but I think it was worth it in the end. So now with this bolted up, I mocked up everything. I have to move on to the front portion of the e-brake, which I'll show you now. All right, here's the factory e-brake setup. I believe I got this off at S14. So the way I was hoping this would work is this rear portion here, I was hoping would bolt just to the floor pan of the cab. That's not gonna work. I might be able to bolt it to the back of the cab, and then that sets the actual e-brake set on the floor between the seats perfectly, just behind the shifter. So that'd be a great spot for it. So I'm gonna take this apart a little bit and see what I can do. Another really quick update, I was able to separate this piece of the e-brake from the handle portion. So that came out of that hole right there. I just drilled it out. It was kind of like mushroomed out aluminum, kind of like a rivet, but and then what I did was I marked with a piece of tape there about the distance for midway on the tensioner, so that gives me a little bit of room either way. And then check this out. So it certainly is too short to mount it underneath the floor pan where I originally wanted. I got to keep it about where this piece of tape is right here. So what this does, see how this kind of slants up through that? I'm going to build a flat bracket off of the back of this and then go straight through the cab right there, and then that'll send it right along the floor pan on the tunnel for the transmission, right where I want it anyways. So I'm just going to put a little hole there that I can block off with a plate and a gasket, and that should be it for going through the cab. So pretty excited about that. Woo! I am sailing through this. Okay. Made up, first I put a pass-through in my cab. It happens to land perfectly between the structural support there. And then this little bracket here. So the normal way that this bolts through the floor just bolts straight to this bracket here, and it clears my gas tank and all that. And yeah, so I just gotta mount this bracket to the back of the cab and make it look a little bit nicer. But right on, one more update. So I was able to make this bracket here. So I have a neoprene rubber gasket in between the back of the cab and this bracket. So it's a little flexible. I'm gonna give it a try with the e-brake once I get the handle inside bolted together. But if it looks like it's gonna buckle or tear out right here, then I will just weld it here, and that will definitely stiffen everything up. So, but being completely done on the outside here, I think it's a good place to call it for the night. So I'll tackle this again tomorrow. All right, what's up everyone? It's a new day. Left off with this little bracket back here, finishing up. I was a little worried about how flexible this back wall is here with this bracket being bolted here, but most of the forces in this are just in the cable itself. So that means where the cable is attached on the brake caliper and where the handle is mounted to the floor are the real points where that tension is going to be held in. Anything where the sheathing is mounted, the only forces they're really going to feel is like if this cable isn't being pulled perfectly straight, there will be a little bit of force up and down there. So let's jump inside and see what my options are for mounting on the floor. Okay, so I have my shifter here that I need to worry about with interference, and the seat needs to come over like 2 inches. But if you take a look, so the end of this cable needs to bolt up to the back of this plate right here. So like about there. And then, I mean, you can see I got way more than 2 inches right here. So I can bring that over a little bit, but really nothing sits right here. There's no center console in the 620. And then there's really no interference on the shifter either. You can see that's where the shifter hole is. So, you know, with this, I'm not going to be driving with my e-brake up. So there's really no interference issues here either. So I'm going to mount it just a bit off to the side like this on the passenger side. Leave enough room for the seat belt upright, and just enough room to bring that seat in a tiny bit. But all I had to do was bend this ear over here a little bit, and I'm just gonna bolt it into the floor here, and then we could give it a try. So I decided to just take my seat out because it was in the way of getting over here, and I know how much of a pain in the butt it is to drill sideways and all this nonsense, so I figured I'd just pop a few bolts out and move it out of the way. Also found my old Gretty Trust shift knob. It's a little rough, but it could be restored. If you guys think that I should restore this and do a giveaway on it, then drop a comment below and let me know. I'm gonna go with the OE knob from nissanparts.cc, so I don't really need this as much as I do like it. It's kind of vintage. But anyways, so now with the seat out of the way, I can get back to going to town on this. Alright, you'd have just seen me testing out that e-brake, and everything seems to be working really awesome. I'm so stoked on that. There's a little mismatch in the cable pull and everything. I think I can adjust that out with the settings, or maybe just get some new cables because those ones are pretty old. I do have to install the switch. So this switch triggers the light on the dash that says brake, whatever. It lets you know your e-brake's still up so you don't drive around with it on. I extended the wire in the factory harness, and I'll be able to get one of these clips from Wiring Specialties, I'm sure. They provide all of the male and female ends of these clips, and then I can just plug into that. Worst case scenario, I can go female spade connector on this, but I don't like doing that. So I extend the wire like I said, so that'll run under the passenger seat and connect to this and trigger that light when the e-brake is on or off. So I think that's a wrap. I'm super stoked that that went so well. It was a little bit of a struggle, but I'm glad I have an e-brake now. I used to drive this thing without an e-brake and it was a huge pain. So thank you guys so much for subscribing, and drop a comment and let me know what you think. And as always, thank you for watching.